Hey y'all, welcome to week 6 of your first year of drum lessons. My name is Penny Larson and I am super happy to have you with me today. Today we are going to talk about accents and paradiddles and flams. And two of those things we've already talked a bit about, but we're going to expand what we're doing with accents and paradiddles. And flams is going to be a totally new thing for us. First, let's start with those accents. And if you remember when we talked about accents before, we talked about we're going to play a loud note and then a soft note. And we're going to do this down, up motion. So what we're going to do today with that, got another handout for y'all. We've got a couple today. What we're going to do with that is just put it in a simple warm-up exercise. This is something I still do, not every day, but this is one of my typical go-to first thing when I pick up the sticks is this, a lot of the time. It's 8 on each hand. So just eighth notes through the whole thing. 8 on each hand, no accents. 8 on each hand with accents on the beat. So if we're counting 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, the accents will be 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? And then the last line is accents on all the ands. And we're going to call that upbeats. So that's a really old term for offbeat eighth notes. When you're marching, when you lift your foot, that's the offbeat eighth note, right? When you're marching, you pick your foot up on the and 2, and 3, and 4, right? That kind of thing. And so we call them upbeats. Fast fact, I had a very unsuccessful music store called Upbeats for a while. There you go, Penny Larson trivia. So if you notice on our handout, and again, this will be available down below in the doobly-doo. On this top line, I've got arrows that go up and down. And that just signifies for eights, we're going to do full strokes, right? Because we want to play a loud note and then get ready for another loud note. In the second line, I've got down, up, because that's 1 and 2 and 3 and. And then on the bottom line, I've got up, down, because that's 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, right? Something to be aware of, since we're here getting ready for the next measure, I'm actually going to leave my left hand down here, and here it already is a down. Okay, so if I was going to do the middle line over and over again, so just bucks, we're going to call that, then I would do that upstroke with the left hand at the end. But since we're going to continue on, I'm going to leave my left hand down there. So I'm going to do a tap stroke, which we're going to talk more about next week. But until then, if you notice what I'm doing looking a little different than that upstroke, that's why. The right hand too, at the end, I'm going to do a tap stroke. One, two, ready, go. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and down, up, down, up, down, up, down, tap, down, up, down, up, down, tap, up, down, 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 up, down. 1 and 2, 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 do a fancy thing with my metronome, which is with the paid version of Pro Metronome, you can set it to gradually speed up. And let's do that. Okay, so I'm going to start a little bit faster than we just were, and I'm going to speed up to 125 beats per minute. I'm going to start at 80. And it's going to speed up every 6 measures. So I'm going to skip the first measure of right hands just so I can be even with it, okay? So every 6 measures, we're going to increase by 4 beats per measure. We're going to start at 80, we're going to end up at 125, and it should take us about 3 minutes to get there, all right? So here we go. 2, ready, left hand, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and And once with the metronome set like that, once it reaches the top speed, it just keeps going at that top speed. So I did the last couple times at 125. But that's how to do that. Whether you're using a metronome and you have to stop and speed the metronome up manually, or if you're doing it by yourself, you want to start and speed up. And start pretty slow. If I was actually doing this as a warm-up, I would start slower than I did. But I just wanted to give you an idea of how that works. So that's one of my favorite warm-up exercises ever. And I learned it when I was, 14? So it's an oldie but a moldie, but sometimes just simple patterns are really great to get your hands going. You can work on the accents, you can work on those motions. You notice I tried to stay relaxed the whole time. I was counting out loud for y'all, so if anything, counting out loud was the hardest part of that. But you want to just keep your technique good, keep the flow going, stay relaxed, right? If you're noticing yourself tensing up, back it down a little bit, right? It's a lie to say you should never tense up, right? It's just going to be part of the process, but you want to keep your tension to an absolute minimum, okay? I mean, if you fully relaxed your body, you'd fall off the throne into a pile of goo on the floor, right? So anytime anyone says, get rid of all tension, it's a simplification, right? And just it's in my nature to not like those. I was always the kid that was like, but wait, right? Like I just said, if I totally relaxed, I'd fall on the floor, right? I was totally that kid, right? So I teach for that kid. So yeah, as you speed up, if you notice some tension, you want to back it down. Naturally, there's going to come times where you're like pushing a little hard and you're like, let's see how fast I can go. I'll tell you, as soon as you feel that tension, you're going to lock up, right? And you're going to feel like a rigor mortis, and you're actually going to fall off a cliff pretty quick, right? When it comes to trying to speed up. If you squeeze, as soon as you squeeze any of these muscles, everything down the line is going to freeze up too, right? So if you're tensing your shoulders, that's just really bad for trying to keep your fingers especially as loose as possible, right? The big muscles tense, tension causes tension in the smaller muscles, okay? So that's 8 bucks and upbeats. And you can work on each line separately if you want, that's totally cool. I like to do them as a row, like this. All right, next, the Paradiddle Pyramid. There's a few different ways to do this. This is the way that I prefer. We're going to do 4 single paradiddles, 4 double paradiddles, 4 triple paradiddles, and then 4 double paradiddles again, and then we're going to repeat. So it's 4 of each. Sometimes people will do 4 singles at the beginning and the end, so you end up doing 8 singles in a row, and that just feels unbalanced to me. So I prefer it this way. But this is another one. This is a traditional exercise, right? So let's review really quick. We've got our single paradiddles. Paradiddle, paradiddle. Our double paradiddles, which I'm going to count with the para-para method. Paradiddle, paradiddle. And the triple paradiddles, which I'm going to count paradiddle. Paradiddle, paradiddle. Okay? So, before I try it with a metronome, let's just do that really slowly. So 4 times of each, and I'll loop it a couple times. So we've got paradiddle, 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 And so you're trying to keep those notes as even as possible. Like we talked about before, if someone wasn't looking at me, it should sound like just paradiddle, 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 right? That's what I'm going for. And doing that on the pad, makes that very exposed, right? Because on the pad, I can even hear the difference in pitches in my sticks. Right? So even just that little difference shows up on the pad. And so trying to balance out your hands on a drum pad it raises the degree of difficulty. Playing this on a snare drum changes up the difficulty and makes certain aspects of it more challenging, right? But for me, I love working on stuff like this on the pad because trying to get sticks, which are made of wood, right? So very few are perfectly pitch matched. But trying to get those perfectly balanced is quite a challenge on the drum pad. So I don't even want you to do this with a metronome just yet, because if you notice, not all the measures have the right number of notes. The double paradiddle, because there's 6 notes in it, paradiddle, has 24 notes instead of 16. Don't worry about that. Just keep all the 16th notes even. If you're feeling desperate to use a metronome, the way I'd like you to use it is for it to click all of these 16th notes. And so what I mean is, if we're in 4/4, I'm going to make it so the metronome clicks an even sound. And with this metronome, I can make it go really quite fast. So let's set it for 300. And let's think of that as paradiddle, 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 So you can do that. I could speed it up. Let's try 350. Paradiddle, 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 speed it up one more time to 400, say. Paradiddle, 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 You can do it without the metronome if that gets really obnoxious, because that was pretty obnoxious. Just try and keep it steady, right? So let me do it a teeny bit slower than that was. Paradiddle, 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 Okay, so this is just good practice to get used to going back and forth between the different paradiddle variations. and that'll come up, right? Okay, lastly today we're going to talk about flams. And flams are this really cool thing. They're rudiment number 20. They let you thicken up the sound of the drums, whether it's a tom or a snare drum, especially a snare drum. If you just play single notes, it can sound a little thin. Here, I'll play you one pattern without flams and then one pattern with flams so you can see how it sounds. Okay, so that was no flams. With flams, right? A lot more chunky, even just on the drum pad. On the snare drum, the difference is remarkable, right? Okay, so what's a flam? A flam is a grace note played before the primary note. So if this is the note I'm going to play, and I want to play a little note before it, you don't want to think of this as two separate notes. You don't want to think right? You want to think of, this sounds kind of silly because the sound is so short, but you almost want to have the primary note, the loud note, start before the sound of the quiet note dies away. They should sound like one chunky thing, not two separate notes. Okay? It's very important to take your time and get back into position before you play the next one. The only way that you'll be able to play these in context is by getting really comfortable with this technique so that in the flow, that technique is just there. So my right hand is the high note, my left hand is the low note, so this is called a right flam. If I change it up, my left hand is high, my left hand is low, my left hand is high and my right hand is low. Then that's a left flam. If you notice with the quiet note, I'm really just dropping it. It's very... Its only job is to support the primary note. It doesn't stand on its own. It is a completely supportive note. One hand at a time, so I'm going to work on a series of right flams. And then a series of left. But you also want to work on them alternating. This is when it's very important that you take your time and get set between the flams. A lot of times I will see students basically look like windshield wipers on a car, right? They kind of end up with this back and forth thing. That's no good, right? You want to make sure that your technique stays good. Your sticks are still moving straight up and down. If it helps, you can actually put a beat in there. Flam, and, 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 flam. This is coming from my marching background, but I firmly believe this is the best way to work on flams, even if we're never going to play marching stuff and we're only going to use these on the drum set. Working on them in such an extreme way will help to keep the patterns separated. So right, if you can play a nice, clean, tight flam like that, playing a looser flam like you might want to on the drums, well, that's easy, right? But getting this really strict flam is important to be able to do that and then have control over how loose or tight you want the flam to be. By loose or tight, I just mean how close that grace note is. So a tight flam, right? This is like I explained to you, the grace note is right there, right? If I wanted the sound to be a little looser, probably make that quiet note a little louder, actually, and so bring it up and then do it a little sooner. And then it almost does sound like two notes, da-bum, da-bum. And on the drum set, that can be really helpful. On the pad and on just the snare drum, it would serve to confuse the rhythm. So you want to be very careful about that. So for now, nice and tight. And. Okay. So that's going to do it for today. A little bit of a breather today. We added some accents into our eighth notes that we were already playing. We combined all the paradiddle variations into the Paradiddle Pyramid. And we learned a new rudiment, flams. Take this breather, review what we've been doing. These lessons that are a little bit more, hey, here's a new thing, but it's not too challenging. These are a good time to review what we've been doing and make sure you're keeping up, okay? As well as obviously absorbing this new information. Okay, so that's going to do it for today. I hope you see me on Friday for the drum set lesson, and I'll see you again soon. All right, thanks guys. Love you. Bye.